Podbean, your message amplified.
Ready to share your message with the world? Start your podcast journey with Podbean.
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 Podbean. Podbean, the AI-powered all-in-one podcast platform.
Thousands of businesses and enterprises trust Podbean to launch their podcasts.
Launch your podcast on Podbean today.
My school uses Podbean.
My church, too.
I love it. I really do.
You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium. Available on Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean, and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about the disappearance of Emma Fillipoff. So it's over to you now, Mark, for this week's Invisible Tale.
Emma Fillipoff is a 39-year-old Canadian woman originally from Perth in Canada who has been missing since the 28th of November in 2012. She was last seen in front of the Empress Hotel in Victoria, British Columbia, also in Canada, at the age of 26. Initially, police stated that Emma Fillipoff had last been seen with some of her friends, and investigators who explored more than 200 leads have so far only turned up minimal information as to her whereabouts. But what information that law enforcement did manage to retrieve indicated that she was planning to return to her home. However, there was no proof that she ever left Victoria in the first place. And not only that, but a cell phone that she had only recently purchased shows that it had never been activated. As well as an artist, Emma Fillipoff wrote copious amounts of poems about her time in Victoria. However, none of her writings ever indicated that she was being stalked. And, according to some experts, although some of her work did indicate she was depressed, none of her writings had any hallmarks of any suicidal ideation. On the 29th of November in 2021, the 9th anniversary of her disappearance, police released additional images of Emma, as well as pictures of the art that she created, in hope that it would create new leads. And in the November of 2022, law enforcement released an age progression image of Emma Fillipoff again, in the hope of generating new leads. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this lost, not found episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm a medium, a ufologist, a true crime buff, and a man with a very dark and disturbed sense of humour who has just authored a new book about reverse psychology. So whatever you do, please don't buy it. But to give you a better idea of who I am and what I do, every week, usually on a Tuesday night, though occasionally on a Wednesday, allowing for bank holidays and busy weekends, I do a podcast on the many wide and various subjects that fall under the Unexplained banner. These include ufology, hauntings, disasters, and all sorts of other paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, serial killers, the darker side of some past celebrities, and the occasional missing person that often goes unnoticed. So if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review or an opinion of this episode's subject that I can reply to, a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. Or if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. And if you get a few minutes, perhaps you might like to check out my social media groups and pages, including Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, which are filled daily with all things unexplained and crime. I'll put the links to some of my socials in the description. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the vanishing story surrounding the disappearance of Emma Fillipoff. And this week's necessary disclaimer: This story, as you have probably already gathered, is a tale that sadly involves a missing person and does touch on the subjects of stalking and suicide, so may prove upsetting to some. You listen at your own discretion. Also, all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts of the case still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, made me realise the other day that success is simply a matter of luck, and if you don't believe me, then go and ask any failure. But enough of this foolishness. Let's get back to the story. Emma Fillipoff was born on the 6th of January in 1986 in Perth, which was a small town near Ottawa in eastern Ontario. And her family, including herself of course, consisted of 3 siblings and, along with her parents James and Shelley Fillipoff, they lived in a house that they had built themselves. She was described as a very active, sweet, kind and quiet child, along with her sister also describing her as having a, and I quote,
magnetic, goofy personality.
Emma was said to be very artistic, which is a gift that she took from her father's side of the family, and she was always engaged in the creative side of life, being especially known for her art projects along with her photography, as she was often seen with a camera in her hands, taking random pictures of anything that caught her attention. On top of her art projects and her photography, Emma Fillipoff was also a keen wordsmith by either writing poetry or keeping entries in her journal, which she did almost every day. She was also known for her very easygoing nature, and according to some of her friends, the term free spirit seemed to fit Emma perfectly, as she not only marched to the beat of her own drum, as it were, but she was also known for wandering everywhere shoeless, so much so that her feet were often bruised or bleeding from all the barefoot walking that she did. Emma Fillipoff always kept herself to herself, so much so that she became a very private person, and because she was often pursued by people who wanted more from her than she could give, there were times when she would feel that she needed to get away for some, what I personally would call Emma time. In the fall of 2011, and after earning her diploma for photojournalism in Perth, Ontario, she went to British Columbia to earn another diploma in the culinary arts. And while she was there, she ended up working at the Redfish Bluefish Seafood Restaurant in Victoria Inner Harbour. And since it was just seasonal work, she left their employee on the 31st of October in 2012 and assured her co-workers that she will be back the following spring. In what police believe to be a preparation for her move back to Ontario, Emma Fillipoff hired a tow truck on the 21st of November in 2012 so she could move her red 1993 Mazda multi-purpose van from Soak, which is a district municipality in the southern tip of Vancouver Island in Canada, to the Chateau Victoria parking garage in Victoria. However, it is unclear as to whether or not the van was functional at the time or why Emma hired the tow truck if it was. Emma's intense need for privacy also meant that her family was often unaware of her movements and situation, believing from the upbeat tone and poetic-sounding emails that she'd sent them, she was doing really well. But not only doing really well, but she was also healthy and happy. But unbeknownst to her family, she had actually been staying at the Sandy Merriman House Women's Shelter in Victoria on and off since the February of 2012. The shelter itself was known to have a month-in, month-out policy, which meant that since February 2012, Emma Fillipoff had been living 1 month at the shelter and then 1 month elsewhere before returning. On the 23rd of November in 2012, Emma Fillipoff is seen at the Victoria YMCA signing up for a membership. Her visit was captured on security footage, which showed Emma hesitating as she left the YMCA building for the first time. And then within minutes, the same footage shows Emma walking in and out of the same building 6 times. This, and factoring in her possible state of fear while staying at the YMCA shelter, led the Fifth State investigators to believe that she may either have been avoiding someone or that she may have been fearful of someone. In the days preceding Emma's disappearance, she had phoned her mother Shelley in Ontario, asking if she could come home. However, according to her mother, each time she spoke to her on the phone, Emma's tone would quickly change, and then she would ask her mother not to come at all. But it was on the final phone call when her mother became aware that her daughter had been staying at the Sandy Merriman House Women's Shelter. And even though Emma had asked her not to come, like any parent, she made plans to fly out to anyway. Emma Fillipoff's final words to her mother on her last phone call were, and I quote,
"I don't know how I can face you."
After this first short break, in part 2 we will look at the possible last days before Emma Fillipoff's disappearance and the beginning of the investigation.
Dare to discover the unknown? Book your own personal investigation at HAPRA 2026. The Haunted Antiques and Paranormal Research Centre, HAPRA, is now taking 2026 bookings, and your next supernatural adventure is just a £50 deposit away. New for 2026, we have upgraded. Our location now features improved sound insulation on all our windows, making it easier than ever to hear what should not be there. Bring your team, bring your equipment. Explore the unexplained. Record the impossible. Limited slots available. Secure yours now. Book now, believe later. HauntedResearchCentre.com.
Emma Fillipoff's mother, Shelley, arrived at the Sandy Merriman House Women's Shelter at around 11 p.m. on the 28th of November 2012, just 3 hours after Emma had been last seen by police at the Empress Hotel. On an interesting side note, a woman's shelter, which is also known as a woman's refuge or a battered woman's shelter, is a place of temporary protection and support for women escaping domestic violence and intimate partner violence of all forms. However, at the same time, I feel I should point out here that although the term of women's shelter is so named, it is also frequently used to describe a location that is open to all people of all genders that are at risk. Representative data samples done by the Centres for Disease Control and Prevention show that 1 in 3 women in the United States alone will experience physical violence during their lifetime, and 1 in 10 will experience sexual assault. Women's shelters help individuals escape these instances of domestic violence and intimate partner violence and function as a place for protection as they choose how to move forward, with many shelters offering a variety of other services to help women and their children, including counselling and legal guidance. Women's shelters are now available in more than 45 countries around the world, and they are supported by government resources as well as non-profit funds. Early on the day of the 28th of November in 2012, Emma Fillipoff had been captured on security footage purchasing a prepaid cell phone at a 7-Eleven location on Government Street in Victoria. The footage itself shows her hesitating in the The footage itself shows her hesitating in the department store and then seemingly checking the street outside. And after a short time, the footage then shows Emma returning to the 7-Eleven shop to buy a prepaid credit card for $200. It was then reported that she left the Sandy Merriman House Women's Shelter at around 6 p.m. that day, then hailed a taxi and asked the driver to take her on to Victoria International Airport. However, she soon exited the taxi due to a lack of adequate fare, which was kind of odd because she had just bought a $200 prepaid card. Minutes later, when Minutes later, Emma was then seen walking barefoot in front of the Empress Hotel, which, on a totally irrelevant but interesting side note, is one of the oldest pubs in Victoria, Canada, to which one of Emma's acquaintances, a man called Dennis Key, decided to call 911 and tell them that there was a woman in severe distress outside of the hotel. When the Victoria Police arrived on the scene, the first thing they noticed about her was that she was pacing by a crosswalk but wasn't necessarily crossing the street, and that she was looking all around herself as if she was trying to find either something or someone. They first took Emma Fillipoff's name, and then they spent the next 45 minutes speaking to her, by first asking about her mental state and well-being, and about whether she wanted to harm herself or others. However, she reassured the police that she had no intention of harming anyone, including herself, and that she was just fine, telling them point blank that, and I quote,
"I'm going through some things right now and just going for a walk."
To which, after the police decided that she was not a threat to herself or anyone else, they then decided to let her go. It is worth me pointing out here that until a report had surfaced in the June of 2018, no one had reported seeing Emma since 8 p.m. that night on the 28th of November. At 11 p.m. that night of the 28th of November in 2012, Emma's mother, Shelley, arrived at the Sandy Merriman House Women's Shelter looking for her daughter, with a member of staff at the shelter informing her that she had left the building earlier that day at around 6 p.m. And then, later that same evening, the Victoria law enforcement met up with Emma's mother again at the Sandy Merriman House Women's Shelter and determined that no one had seen her daughter since 8 p.m. Shelley then described to the police Emma's odd phone calls, and the staff at the shelter described her paranoid behaviour. And so, by midnight, again on the 28th of November in 2012, Emma Fillipoff was classified as a missing person. Police investigators explored more than 200 leads, but turned up very little information as to Emma's whereabouts, and any evidence that authorities did have seemed to indicate that she was planning to return home to Ottawa. However, there was no proof that she ever left Victoria in the first place. And not only that, but it also transpired that a cell phone that she had bought earlier had never been activated. It also transpired that Emma Fillipoff's credit card was later allegedly found on the side of the road near the Jean-Louis-Foucault Community Centre, which is north, roughly 20 kilometres or 12.4 miles, of where she disappeared, with it being found by a stranger whose use of the card to purchase some cigarettes was tracked by the police. The stranger was interrogated and polygraphed, but was clearly cleared of any suspicion, and a search of the area where the card was found turned up nothing. According to later reports, prior to her leaving Perth, Emma Fillipoff had met a young man at a music festival, with this young man being immediately smitten with the young 26-year-old, so much so that he wanted to get to know her better. And although they did go on many walks together, from what I can gather, they weren't exactly on the same page when it came to their relationship, with the young man having the idea that these walks were some sort of date and Emma seeing their relationship as just being friends. So when she told them that she was initially leaving the area, he didn't take the news too well. And a few months later, by a fantastic coincidence, and according to this same young man, he ran into Emma again when he was working in Victoria. So, as with the stranger who used the lost credit card, the Victoria police also investigated this young man thoroughly. And a year after Emma's disappearance, the RCMP, otherwise known as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who were helping with the investigation, also gave him a polygraph which he passed, and so consequently the young man was ultimately cleared from the investigation, despite how suspiciously fantastic his story sounded. On an interesting side note here, a polygraph, which is often incorrectly referred to as a lie detector test, is a pseudo-scientific device or procedure that measures and records several physiological indicators such as blood pressure, pulse, respiration and skin conductivity while a person is asked and answers a series of questions. The belief underpinning the use of the polygraph is that deceptive answers will produce physiological responses that can be differentiated from those associated with non-deceptive answers. However, there are no specific physiological reactions associated with lying, making it difficult to identify factors that separate those who are lying from those who are telling the truth. In some countries, polygraphs are used as an interrogation tool with criminal suspects or candidates for sensitive public or private sector employment. And some United States law enforcement and federal government agencies, as well as many police departments, use polygraph examinations to interrogate suspects and screen new employees. Assessments of polygraphy by scientific and government bodies generally suggest that polygraphs are highly inaccurate, may easily be defeated by countermeasures, and are imperfect or invalid means of assessing truthfulness. And a comprehensive 2003 review by the National Academy of Sciences of existing research concluded that there was, and I quote,
little basis for the expectation that a polygraph test could have extremely high accuracy.
With the American Psychological Association stating that, and again I quote, most psychologists agree that there is little evidence that polygraph tests can accurately detect lies. And so it is for this reason that the use of polygraphs to detect lies is considered either a form of pseudoscience or even junk science. Soon after Emma's disappearance, law enforcement managed to locate her red 1993 Mazda multi-purpose van that she had hired, left in a parking lot at the Chateau Victoria with almost all her belongings in it. These included her passport, library card, digital cameras, clothes, a pillow, assorted ornaments, her laptop, along with some recently borrowed library books, with the police believing that she used this van as storage after she had spoken with the Chateau Victoria staff at 7 a.m. on the morning that she disappeared. And in the June of 2018, a man reported, rather lately I feel, that in the early morning following Emma's disappearance, he had picked up a young woman in distress matching her description in the nearby town of Esquimalt. After this second short break, in part 3 we will look at the continuing search for Emma Fillipoff by her mother, law enforcement and the involvement of the Fifth Estate.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07 852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk. Or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
In the March of 2016, Emma Fillipoff's mother, Shelley, along with her brother, were both charged with money laundering, as well as drug and weapons offences, after an Ontario Provincial Police investigation. Shelley Fillipoff has insisted the charges that were brought against her and her son had nothing to do with the disappearance of her daughter, saying that, and I quote,
"The one has nothing to do with the other."
And in the November of 2016, all the laundering charges were dropped against Shelley Fillipoff, thus clearing her of any involvement. Emma's mother, Shelley Fillipoff, did not give up any hope in locating her daughter, and although she had to return home from the Sandy Merriman's House Women's Shelter in Victoria, she never gave up the search, following leads of her own and canvassing around Vancouver, where a tip had stated that her daughter may have been spotted. Until eventually Shelley reached out to the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation for the CBC, or the CBC for short, which then prompted the Fifth Estate to begin investigation of their own. On an interesting side note, the Fifth Estate is a social cultural reference to groupings of outlier viewpoints in contemporary society and is most associated with bloggers, journalists publishing in non-mainstream media outlets and online social networks. The Fifth Estate extends the sequence of the three classical estates of the democratic state, which are legislative, executive, judicial, along with the preceding Fourth Estate being essentially the common press. The use of the term Fifth Estate dates to the 1960s counterculture, and the influential Fifth Estate refers to an underground newspaper first published in Detroit in 1965. With web-based technologies having enhanced the scope and power of the Fifth Estate far beyond the modest and boutique conditions of its beginnings. In 2009, it was argued that the Fifth Estate is now not just the blogging community, nor an extension of the media, but networked individuals enabled by the internet, meaning social media, in ways that can hold other estates accountable. During all the media attention as to Emma's whereabouts, a photo was brought to the attention of producers at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The photo was of a woman seen reading and writing while sitting in a coffee shop, which, according to Emma's mother, Shelley, she was known to do exactly that, both back home in Perth and around Victoria. So, for the first time in a long time, her mother finally had some hope. However, when the woman later came forward and identified herself as the woman in the photo, it turned out that that woman was not Emma Fillipoff. In the May of 2014, the Campbell River Courier Island newspaper reported that in Gastown, Vancouver, the business owners Joel and Laurie Sellen witnessed a man in their store throwing out a $25,000 missing person reward poster for Emma Fillipoff, with the pair reporting that the man said at the time, and I quote,
"It's one of those missing persons posters, except she's not missing. She's my girlfriend. She ran away because she hates her parents."
The owners immediately called the police, and although the store security video does capture an image of a man, and as he was caught wearing a distinctive green shirt, he has been sometimes referred to as, yeah, you guessed it, the Green Shirt Man. And nearly 10 years later, in the November of 2023, a new initiative was launched in the hope to find this Green Shirt Man, which also included a police sketch of the man in question, but even after all this time, he has yet still to be identified. In the summer of 2018, a witness just going by the name of William came forward with new information about encountering a woman on the morning after Emma Fillipoff's disappearance, claiming that the woman in question matched both Emma's general description and demeanour. So in the December of 2018, an organisational search of the View Road area of Victoria was instigated. However, the search turned up no additional clues. And on the 29th of November in 2021, the 9th anniversary of her disappearance, police released additional images of Emma Fillipoff as well as pictures of the art that she created in the hope that she would create new leads. And a year later, in the November of 2022, law enforcement then released an age progression image of Emma, again in hopes of generating new leads. On an interesting side note here, an age progression image, or otherwise known simply as age progression, is a method that is involved with changing a photo of an individual to show the impact of maturing on their appearance. Computerized image processing is the most widely recognised procedure, although craftsmen's drawings are also frequently used. Age progression is most frequently utilised as a forensic tool by law enforcement officers to show the likely current appearance of a missing individual anticipated from a photo that might be years old. When authorities took another look at Emma's laptop, at her journals and poetry, it was generally felt by law enforcement that her work showed that she felt like someone had been following her, with a feeling like she was being stalked. But not only that, it also appeared that on her laptop there was a note which led the police to investigate her disappearance as a potential suicide, with the note beginning with the words, "To everyone from dead Emma." However, her mother, Emma Fillipoff, remains adamant that her daughter would never have taken her own life, along with the aforementioned Fifth Estate investigators agreeing that the note on her laptop does not look like a suicide note. To be honest with you, Unexplainers, I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb here and say that although, according to Emma Fillipoff, it is unlikely that Emma may have taken her own life, it is a possibility that, sadly, we cannot rule out.
If anyone has any information or who has seen Emma Fillipoff, you should call the Victoria Police Department's non-emergency line at 250 995 7654 or contact their local police department. Tips can also be provided anonymously via Crime Stoppers at 800 222 8477.
I will be putting the contact numbers in the description details for this podcast.
Thank you for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 162, we are going to be looking at the Nazi Gold Train. The Nazi Gold Train is an urban legend about a train laden with gold and treasure that was hidden by the Nazis in southwest Poland during the last days of World War II. Between 2015 and 2018, the train received renewed global media interest when two Polish men claimed to have discovered it using ground-penetrating radar. However, excavations were halted when the detected anomaly was found to be a natural geology.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. As usual, the pronunciations of all the names and places was all mine. The voices in this episode were Linda Hughes as Emma Fillipoff, Denise Poolar as Emma Fillipoff, Freddie Hughes as the Green Shirt Man, and Mark Hughes, myself. I did a little bit of narration along the way. With special thanks, of course, to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley. And, of course, a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of ideas here at the office for Mark's Unexplained World podcast. But if you do know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters, and any other sort of paranormal phenomena, as well as true crime, unsolved crime and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I'll see what I can do. As a way of a thank you, I'll also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast, if they're happy for me to do so, of course. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember, guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. No AI was used or harmed in the making of this or any other episode of Mark's Unexplained World. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.